The title of the message is Prophecies America Cannot Ignore. Our blessings or curses are released by these prophecies. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, you are probably familiar with this passage. It says this: Now the Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. I will bless them that bless thee, and curse those that curseth thee, and in these shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Now we know this is a prophecy about Israel. We know that Israel birthed the Messiah. We know that through the Messiah, the entire world is blessed with a redemptive covenant. Now, when I talk about blessing and cursing, there's something I want to share with you. The blessing and the cursing that we read about in the Bible was established in the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Bible. This church is very, very familiar with Torah teaching and what the Torah is. But if you're not familiar, it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and also the book of Deuteronomy. In the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Leviticus is where we find what is called the blessing and the curse of the law. Basically, it was given to Israel to motivate them to do the right thing. How many of you know you motivate your children by saying, if you make good grades, we're going to go on vacation here. If you don't make good grades, you're going to have to stay at that desk for the next month and study. So you motivate them by a positive or a negative. And you have to keep up with what you've told them in order to have credibility with them. Now, considering this, let me share something with you. The blessing and curse sections of the law are found in Deuteronomy chapter 19 and also Leviticus 26. These are the 2 main sections. And they were blessed for obeying God, but they could come under a curse for disobeying God. The word bless is found in the Old Testament 117 times. Blessing is found 54 times. The word blessed is found 217 times. Come on back, guys, if you will, from that, which is a total of 388 times. The word curse is found in the Old Testament 89 times. The word cursed is 67 times. And the word cursing is found a total of 9 times. Now, in the Torah code, you have 3 things, and this is important that you understand this, or it won't make sense to you. You have what's called the sacrificial code, the ceremonial code, and the judicial moral code. Because as I talk about blessing and curse, it will not make sense, because a lot of people will say, that's just Old Testament, but I want to show you something. The sacrificial code in the Torah are the ordinances of sacrificing animals, grains, and offerings. The ceremonial code deals with the statutes concerning the Sabbath days, the Jubilees, and the feast. And there is also what's called a judicial or moral code, which deals with judicial laws for mankind, how you treat one another, penalties for mistreating people. Now, this is important that you understand. The sacrificial code was fulfilled through Jesus Christ. He was crucified near Passover. He became the final offering. Therefore, we don't offer animals anymore. The ceremonial code was fulfilled through Christ, but there's still portions of it to be fulfilled. For example, there's 3 fall feasts that have not had a total fulfillment yet. I believe the fulfillment will be the rapture, the tribulation, and the millennial reign of Christ, which is trumpets, atonement, and tabernacles. So it's partially fulfilled, but not totally. The judicial moral code, and this is what's very significant to understand, this particular code is still in existence today. A lot of people do not realize this, but it absolutely is still in existence today. Now, let me just share something with you about blessings and curses. When you talk about being blessed or being cursed, the word bless in Hebrew is the word barak, and it means to bless God, to bow, to worship, but it also means to prosper and favor a person or a thing. The word curse is the word arar, and it means to scoop out, malign, to reduce, to make small, or to decrease a person or thing. So when we talk about God blessing something, it basically means this: to favor a person or a thing. When we talk about God cursing something, you've got to get the basic meaning of a curse. Here's what it means: to decrease something, make it small or make it little. We think of a curse being God striking you in the head with lightning, burning all the hair off your head, singeing you into the pits of the underworld till you're consumed. No. It simply means that God takes that which is moving, large, and blessed, but suddenly disfavor comes. He reduces it, he makes it small, and makes it less significant than it was previously. Now, having said that, here's the question. Are curses just a part of the Old Testament theology, or are they still active today? This is a big, big question that people have. In other words, when you go to preach, and I have this happen to me all the time, when you go to preach from the Old Testament, you've always got people that say, yeah, but that's just the Old Testament, and the Old Testament was done away with, and I don't know why Perry Stone's got to preach from the Old Testament. We're New Testament people. We should be preaching from the 27 books of the New Testament. Well, for your information, those 27 books of the New Testament happen to quote the Old Testament hundreds of times. Number two, you cannot prove that Jesus is the Messiah without the Old Testament. Number three, there's 1/3 of the Old Testament prophecies that have not yet happened. So what you going to do about that, silly? Okay? But let's go back to the idea of curses. Now, I'm going to give you curses that were established in the book of Genesis, believe it or not, that we still see in the earth today. Curse number 1 was given to Eve. It's Genesis 3:16. I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. How many of you women had pain when you gave birth to your children? Would you please raise your hand? Well, guess what? That is a part of the curse of sin. Let's look at another one. This was given to Adam. Cursed is the ground for your sake, and the toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. Genesis 3:17-18. Do we have any farmers here? Raise your hand. You have farmed. How many of you have ever come across thorns, thistles, and rocks in the middle of the field? Come on, anybody ever come across that? Let me tell you, you go to Israel and plow, you're going to come across thorns, thistles, and rocks. So in other words, he's saying to Adam here that it's not going to be easy for you to make your bread. You're going to have to sweat to make your bread. How many of you have ever made a sweat? Come on, work and raise your hand. Guess what? Part of the curse. Okay. Here's one to all men. And you shall eat the herb of the field, and the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. Genesis 3:19. Here's another one. This was given to the serpent, to the animal kingdom. Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all cattle, more than every beast of the field. And your belly you shall go, and you shall eat dust all the days of your life. Genesis 3:14. Has anybody ever seen a flying snake? Raise your hand. Well, guess not. Has anybody ever seen a snake climb a tree? Well, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Two people have. How many of you have ever seen a snake laying on its belly on the ground crawling? Would you raise your hand? Guess what? You saw the curse. You saw the curse. Because the serpent apparently did more than crawl in the beginning, but the curse brought it to its belly. Now, I just gave you 4 examples found that deal with God pronouncing a curse in the garden, and those curses are still active in the earth today and have not been totally lifted because we're still living under a cursed planet. Let's go to the big one here. Genesis chapter 3:19. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and dust you shall return. Well, well, well. There's a good one for you. How many of you do believe that after about 5 years of being in the ground, somebody's body eventually goes back to dust? Would you raise your hand? If you don't believe that happens, you just don't know. It does. Guess what? All part of what? The curse. So in other words, for me to say that that was in the Old Testament and it's not valid today, it's not correct. Because those 5 curses are still effective today. Why? Because we're still living under an earth that's cursed until the Messiah returns and removes the curse. The curse will be removed. Part of it will be removed in what's called the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah. He's going to bind Satan, Revelation chapter 20 and verse 2. And when God binds Satan, it totally limits the power of demonic activity on the earth for the 1,000 years. That's why there can be peace for 1,000 years. Number 2, you find out that they're at the return of the saints. Eventually, in the eternal kingdom, Revelation 24, there's no death and no pain. You discover Isaiah 65:25 in the 1,000-year reign of Christ, the animal kingdom changes because the Bible talks about the lion laying down beside the lamb and the children playing in the den of a snake without being affected or harmed. The age of men increases even in the millennial reign. Isaiah chapter 65 and verse 20, if a man dies before he's 100, it'll be a rare thing. Men are going to live much older when Christ returns to rule on earth for 1,000 years. So part of these curses will be lifted at the return of Christ to rule on earth, and the other part of the curses will be completely removed at the time of what we call when the New Jerusalem comes down to earth, and we call that eternity. Now, having said that, the Bible tells us that the last enemy to be destroyed is death. Now, going back to what I said earlier about the codes, the Torah code being divided into 3 categories. The sacrificial code has been fulfilled through Christ. The ceremonial code, part of it has been fulfilled, part of it will be fulfilled, but the judicial moral code still exists. Let's go to number 4, guys, on PowerPoint. I want to show you how the moral code is still existent today. Let's see if this is practiced by most people who are moral. You ready? And all of these are found in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. You were not to see the nakedness of your near kin or family members. You were not to have sexual relations outside your marriage. You were not to offer your children to idol gods. Men were not to have sexual relations with men or with beasts. You were to honor and respect your parents and rest once a week. You were to keep the corners of your field to allow the poor to eat. You were not permitted to lie or steal. If you hire a person, then you must pay them the agreed wage. You must show respect for those who are blind and deaf. That's in Leviticus 19:14. You're to honor the older among you and not vex a stranger. 19 verses 32 and 34. There are cycles of every seventh day, every seventh year, and 7 times 7 years of special jubilees and rest seasons. Leviticus 25. Judges and officers were established in every city. Judicial leaders could not take gifts lest it perverted their judgment. I think we need to go back to that one. Maybe the politicians would be more honest. You must have at least 2 or 3 witnesses to establish guilt at a crime. Now, if you look at that, that's all, quote, Old Testament. Guess what? That's all part of the law. Guess what? It's ceremonial. It's not ceremonial. It's judicial and moral. Guess what? It still exists today. So in other words, this is very important you understand this as we talk about America, and that is this, that the law of God that established how you treat mankind and your relationship with him that involves social, judicial, or moral things is still active in the eyes of God today. In fact, I wish I had a list, but I don't have this. I can show you all 10 commandments found in the New Testament, all 10. So in other words, when the Bible said Jesus did not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it, that's literally what it means there. He didn't come to destroy it. He come to fulfill it. He come to show a more perfect way. You see, when you love God and love people, you'll do what's right. Come on now, I'm preaching here. And that's why you have the love commandment. Now, here's what I want to talk about. Why would God bring a curse on the United States of America? I mean, after all, aren't we founded on the Word of God? Okay, well, let's go through some things. Number one, our nation was founded by Christians for a Christian nation, if you go as far back as the Puritans and even some of the early founding fathers. Now, I don't know what book Obama read when he got up in Turkey and said, we are not a Christian nation. Because apparently they didn't teach him in Harvard history correctly, because we are a Christian nation based on Christian principles. And a lot of times at the universities, the professors won't teach that. Number two, our 3 national documents, which is the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, this is important, are based on the Torah, the book of Isaiah, and the 4 Gospels. And even Harry Truman was quoted years ago of saying that. Number 3, our national laws are rooted in the law of Moses and the laws found in the judicial moral principles that I just told you. Number 4, our nation has the same patterns of ancient Israel. And I'm not going to go through that. I've been teaching that a lot on television over the years in some of our books about how, 13 tribes, 13 colonies. We crossed the sea to get to our promised land. They crossed the sea to get to their promised land. We were divided between the north and the south. They were divided between the north and the south. Come on here. And so there's parallels to ancient Israel to actually the United States of America. Now, the Bible tells us this: where little is known, little is required. Where much is known, much is required. The same blessings and curses placed upon ancient Israel can still be released and accepted today through the moral code. All God ever has to do is remove the hedge of protection, the same thing that happened with Job, and America will come under failure and attack, and we will be diminished. Does anybody want to go there with